I figured I would make a little follow-up video to my latest video on here, the 9/11 thing, tonight. And this pertains to an article by Chris Hedges. I'll post a link to the article down below. It's worth a read, definitely worth a read. But what I want to get out there tonight is, in a small way, some points of disagreement with Chris Hedges on that point. Don't get me wrong, I think what he's talking about in his article regarding nationalism, regarding this fake patriotism and nationalism overall, I don't believe that is a good thing at all. It is a poisonous thing for humanity, basically. And so, Hedges and I agree on that point completely. Chris Hedges, however, also believes that let's put it this way, he is still in the camp that, or of the persuasion that believes essentially in the official narrative. And the official narrative regarding 9/11 is what the government told us. And the initial narrative, it has to do with some sort of a blowback, okay? Namely, the whole blowback thing is a response to U.S. foreign policy by various Muslim states or factions within these states. And obviously, this is not just a theory, this is very real, although it may not be the only factor that should be considered here. So I'm going to share with you a response to Chris Hedges' latest article, which I felt was worth disseminating. I don't expect that people on different sides of this contentious topic, namely the difference between blowback theory and inside job, will ever agree to disagree, much less move towards a consensus. Those who find the blowback theory aspect of the geopolitical dynamics in question to be the be-all obviously resent and reject any plot complications that dilute the, dare I say, purity of the basic 19 lone nuts surprise attack scenario. Again, this is in response to Chris Hedges, let's say, what he still believes in, that the narrative is. Broadening the scope to include actors in the American Imperium and others involved in interested third parties clutters that script, and in their eyes needlessly undermines and undercuts the supreme importance of the relatively narrow blowback rationale. They prefer, or insist upon, a script that isn't burdened with material that complicates or contaminates this monolithic theme. Consciously or not, they impose a rigid and entirely artificial either or construct upon the analysis. Either one reasonably accepts the vital and overriding truth that 9/11 is all about blowback, in other words, a response, a pure response to U.S. foreign policy, or irrationally, stubbornly, stupidly, foolishly, perforce rejects or denies the reality and primacy of blowback in favor of chasing one's own tail with half-baked conspiracy theories. This truther-phobic perspective refuses to accommodate the argument that while blowback is indeed real and significant and important and even crucial in the overall scheme of things, it does not exist in a vacuum. It's a well-known and understood phenomenon that can be incorporated and manipulated, not to mention simulated by interested parties for nefarious purposes. It is as good a cover as any. I want to point out here, this is not my own writing. This is a response by somebody else to Chris Hedges' article on some other website, okay? I thought it hit the nail on the head, basically. That's why I'm reading it and want to share it with you. And as importantly, in and of itself, the blowback hypothesis is simply insufficient to overcome or explain away the innumerable problematic elements of the events of 9/11 and the government's response to it. The nexus of unexplored and unexplained coincidences, contradictions, conflicts, deceptions, inconsistencies, loose ends, and blatant malfeasance attending the catastrophic events. That all gets impatiently swept under the rug of blowback. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually do believe in blowback. I believe there is an element of blowback out there. But it seems like such a dramatically coherent and compelling script that true believers can't abide blowback that challenges, it seems like an elegance to say this, like this blowback theory is the answer to these events. And I'm noticing more and more that there's a latent, let's say, authoritarian follower aspect to this whole truther phobia. You know, for one thing, truthers are equated with birthers now, you know, as if everybody is equally ignorant. And apart from disputing the merits and legitimacy of conflicting analysis, the phobes, those who were truther phobic, seem as much aroused that irrelevant truthers refuse to defer to, let's say, intellectual authority figures, which would include thinkers like Chomsky or Chalmers Johnson or various other intellectuals out there. Personally, I don't believe that these people are leftist gatekeepers, but let's just say that they have constructed their own little narratives and like Chris Hedges, don't consider the possibility that the entire narrative might be far more complicated than what they think. So, there are all sorts of crazy theories out there, of course, amongst the truther movement, that is, and amongst those which I categorically reject myself. Okay, categorically I reject any kind of, space weapons, holograms, planes didn't fly into the two towers. Okay, give me a break. Missiles, yeah, perhaps in the case of the Pentagon, perhaps even in the case of that Flight 93 in Pennsylvania, that's still a possibility. Other stuff, manipulated images, TV images, and so on, doesn't hold water. Okay. All I can tell you is that the official story is probably contains some truth, okay, but it certainly does not contain all truth. And most of the evidence, if you look at any kind of serious investigation, has been virtually destroyed on purpose. So that's kind of the reason why I put up that favorite video today. Go look at it if you have the time. There are just, too many inconsistencies here, and I'm basically a scientifically minded person, and there are people who are credible in the truth movement, and then there are people who are not credible whatsoever. And that's probably because the entire so-called 9/11 truth movement was undermined and infiltrated from the very beginning. Because, what are you going to do? What you want to do is you want to make people who are starting to question things look like idiots. And some of these experts within the truth movement, as it exists today, let's say pilots for truth or engineers or architects for truth, some are more credible than others, actually. So you can't really make a blanket statement about all of them. But there are too many open questions. And the official narrative, and especially the 9/11 report, and imagine, who was supposed to be heading this to start with, which was no less Henry Kissinger. Okay, I mean, that alone should give you pause. So we will, I'm guessing we will never find out the truth, because no independent commission will ever be brought about, let alone financed by any independent body with the cooperation with others, cooperation of others, and we it will just go like the whole MLK story, the JFK story, as if it just happened out of the blue, and it was just some unfortunate mishap, an accident. And I simply don't believe that. Learning from history is another bogus appeal to authority, since it's very much in the eye of the beholder. So, if I'm a truther, it's because I've indeed learned something from history. The history of the Warren Commission and the Gulf of Tonkin, for starters. Good night.